Alright, so Boruto chapter 60 just dropped, and not gonna lie, I kind of want some action, because this seems to be another fluff. This seems to be another fluff and in-between chapter, but we do learn a couple of interesting things about Code and Damon, which I'm going to get into in a little bit. So basically the chapter opens up with Sai talking to Shikamaru about these claw marks that they found outside of the village, and apparently it's very similar to the flying Raijin jutsu used by Minato, where Code can teleport between different claw marks, right? So it's basically the same jutsu, but just used slightly differently. Instead of using, the tags that Minato uses, he just needs to claw something. And as they're talking, Sai mentions that everybody's being monitored, including Naruto, Boruto, Sasuke, and Amato, and also Kawaki, and they're getting kind of frustrated because all 5 villages have these claw marks. So potentially it could teleport anywhere. Potentially it could literally teleport anywhere, and they're still looking for more that may not have been discovered yet. Then we jump to Kawaki, who's sitting on the Hokage face. He kind of looks around. He sees that he is being monitored by other ninja. And then we go to Amato with Sumire. She's kind of asking what he's gonna do once Kawaki's karma is restored. Kind of a continuation of the last chapter we saw Sumire and Amato in. And he basically tells her that he doesn't want to tell her anything. He basically says that, I'm not gonna betray Konoha, but I kind of feel uncomfortable of you kind of sitting here, so I would appreciate it if you kind of go away. That's basically what he says to her. And then we see that there's another cyborg tank, and she asks, what is that? And he says that he's busy, but that's going to be an ally to Konoha. And once we zoom in, we can see a little bit of smoke or hair or something. I don't know if that's an afro, but we see another cyborg here, which is potentially going to be used as an ally, kind of like Kashin Koji. And then we go back to Code, who is still being ridden by Damon or Damon. However you want to pronounce it, and he's kind of having a good time jumping on him, and Ida doesn't really want to help. She's just like, I'm glad you guys are getting along. And then Code tries to test out Damon's reflecting ability by hitting him with a claw mark, which reflects upon himself. And he thought it was kind of interesting because he says that the reflection is instantaneous and it doesn't matter what his actual intent is, which could potentially be used against him later on. And Code even tells him that that's his ability, and that he can also pull people through his markings. And he goes on to keep asking Damon what are the extents of his abilities. Damon was about to tell him, you know what I mean? He's a little kid. He's gonna just spill the beans right away. But Ida tells him not to, because they don't want to give up all their tricks right away. And Ida basically says that they haven't really known each other long enough for them to just spill all their attacks. And she says all that you need to know is that he can reflect attacks, which kind of frustrates Code a little bit. Says that she's like a difficult nut to crack. And he kind of mentions, he's like, you might have another ability too, right? And she's like, oh, that would be interesting. So kind of hinting that Ida has another ability as well. Again, we have no idea what it is, but we do know that all the cyborgs were meant to be a threat to Jigen, and as of now is not a threat whatsoever. Her Senrigan is more like a surveillance ability, and she has the ability for people to like fall in love with her unless they're of Utsutsuki descent or have like a karma seal or whatnot, so that would probably not work on Jigen either. So she probably has an offensive ability that would ensure that she would actually be a threat to Jigen. But again, she doesn't like fighting her blood, so again, that's very speculative. But anyways, Damon says that he wouldn't mind telling Code, but Ida says that he can't tell him his abilities. And then we jump back to Kawaki's having a little bit of an internal dialogue. He goes into a little convenience store. He's kind of uncomfortable by people like staring at him, and he's thinking to himself that he's more of a hassle to these people and that he doesn't belong here and whatnot. So he's sitting on the Hokage face again with like a water bottle and like a rice ball, and Naruto kind of comes up to him and he basically invites him back to dinner, and Kawaki just kind of says that he's very uncomfortable. He doesn't feel like this place is for him. Jigen is right. He's an outsider. Naruto's kind of hurt by this, and he tells him like, who cares? We're going home, my stupid son. And he basically drags him back home, where they all have like a wonderful meal waiting for them. At the table, Boruto offers Kawaki a ninja headband that was his. Because Kawaki does not have his own. Till Kawaki becomes an actual shinobi and gets his own, then he can give it back. It's going to be loaned to him, kind of like how Sasuke's headband was loaned to Boruto. Then he proceeds to like try it on. Everybody agrees that it looked kind of ridiculous on him, so he kind of holds it around his neck. And then we skip to later on, where he's talking to Naruto when Naruto's getting ready to go to sleep, and he basically is saying that the search for Code is tough, but you do belong here, and if you feel like you don't belong here, then I failed my job as Hokage, which is kind of it's kind of deep. He's like, there was no point in me being Hokage, which is very deep because we know that all of Naruto Part 1, Naruto Shippuden, that was his goal, to be Hokage. But now that he's Hokage, he's kind of saying, you know what, if I can't even make you feel comfortable in my village, then what's the point of me being Hokage? Which is very, very deep. And then we end off the chapter very similarly to the previous chapter, where Kawaki's having this internal dialogue about the karma. He has this little scene where he's thinking to himself about a motto, and getting a purely weaponized karma, and then he says, nope, give me a break, I don't need it, all I need to do is protect Lord Seventh, and the chapter ends. Obviously we know that he is going to get it, because later on, when he fights Boruto, he does have a karma seal, so we do know that he is eventually going to get a weaponized karma. It's kind of unclear to tell what's going to happen from here to there, but I'm going to make another video kind of talking about Boruto chapter 61 and my speculations for the next upcoming chapter. As for this chapter, honestly, not a huge fan. It was a very big fluff chapter. We only saw stuff that we saw before, like with Daemon. We saw like repetitions with Kawaki. We saw they're kind of doing this to emphasize the fact that he's really struggling here. And the only real things that we learned in this chapter, I feel, were Code's ability, which kind of changes a lot. His ability very similar to the Flying Raijin, and Daemon's ability to reflect attacks upon people, even unintentionally when he's not paying attention, you know what I mean? But yeah, that's pretty much what this chapter is about. If you guys like more videos like this, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next one.